Good morning, grade 7. Welcome to science class today, or this is a review or revision for topic 4. Let's start, inshallah. Organisms and habitats. What do you mean by the word organism? It is any living thing. All living things are called organisms, humans, animals, plants, and even
Which page?
organisms, bacteria, fungi. All of these are organisms. Organisms, not
Which page?
and animals and humans, plants, animals, humans, and all the organisms, microorganisms or tiny organisms are called organism. Any living thing is called organism. Fine. Organism gets food, or an organism gets food, shelter, water, shelter, and other things from its environment that it needs to live. So all organisms need the same things: food, water, shelter. Without these things, the living things can't survive.
Teacher, which page?
These things, food, water, shelter, to grow and reproduce. Right. These things.
أستاذ أي صفحة؟
195. 195. Organisms need food, water, shelter. These things are called resources. So when we hear this word resources, means food, water, shelter. All of these things are important for living things to grow and reproduce. Where can the organism find these things? In its habitat. The habitat is the environment that provides these things or the resources a specific organism needs to live and grow and reproduce. So we have three words here, three concepts or three words, very important: organism, resources, and habitat. Organism, resources, and habitat. Right. The environment or the ecosystem can be divided. We can divide the ecosystem into two important or two major components: the biotic factors and the abiotic factors. اوكي انا لاحظت انه بالكويز في ناس بيخربطوا بين البيوتيك والابيوتيك. Biotic like this, okay, means
with no
the part of the environment or the part of the habitat or the part of the ecosystem that is living. Plants, animals, humans, microorganisms are called biotic. They are living things. Now, the other word or the other component is abiotic. It's one word.
non-living things.
Non-living things. Abiotic is a one word. It's wrong to say like this. Here, if we say abiotic means biotic. No, it's one word. You can't separate it. Abiotic means non-living things that in the environment. And these non-living things include many things. Light is a biotic factor. Sun, okay, water is a biotic. Soil is a biotic component. Air is a biotic. All of these are non-living things found in the environment, but they are very important for the biotic, for the living things. Without these things, the living things can't survive. Also, there is interaction between biotic and abiotic components. There is always interaction between them. But again, the parts of habitat that are or were once alive and that interacts with an organism are called biotic factors, or these are called biological components. We can also another meaning for biotic factors means biological components, which include trees, plants, animals. Also, the waste products, their wastes are also biotic. So the biotic factors or biological components we can say simply the biotic things. Bacteria, mushrooms, bacteria, mushrooms, and other small organisms or tiny organisms or microorganisms are also biotic. All of them are biotic. Fine. The second part or the second component of the environment is the abiotic factors. Abiotic, notice that it is one word, abiotic factors or the physical component. We can say that it is the physical component of the environment. It includes rocks, space, oxygen or air, water, light, temperature. Notice that all of them are non-living things, and the soil. All of these are abiotic or physical components of the environment. They are very important because they affect the living things. Example, if there is no water or little water or contaminated water or water that is polluted, of course, the poor quality of the water may affect or cause a death or sickness for living things that live there. Fine. Is it clear? What are the levels of organization in the ecosystem? In an ecosystem, the ecosystem is organized from the smallest to the largest in this way. The smallest component of the ecosystem is the organism. A group of organisms of the same species make up a population. Then many populations make a community. A group of communities make the ecosystem. أنا سألتكم بالكويز ترتبوهم من اللارجست للسمولست. كثير منكم كتبهم هيك. كيف كتبهم؟
أنا كتبت العكس. أتذكر.
I'm sorry.
أستاذ هيك كتبوه؟
لا أبصر شو اللي صار معي، علق الجهاز معي.
فك الماوس ارجع حطه أو ما بعرف بس طفيه ارجع شعله.
قاعد اطالع صورة الكتاب عندكم؟ طيب I'm sorry. Now شايفين الكتاب بعده؟ سامعيني؟ هلو؟
بس في خرابيش.
طب مش مشكلة.
يس أستاذ سامعينك.
Levels of organization,
سامعينك.
all of organisms, all of the Indian pythons, for example, pythons, sorry, this snake is an organism. طيب. I want you to know this word, a species. Species is a group. Oh, sorry. ليش اعمل هايلايت خلاص. النت بعده معكم تمام؟ طيب الآن خليكم معي.
حمام برجع.
طلع species is a group of organisms that that can mate with each other and produce offspring that can also mate and reproduce. We mean by species, kind. Another word that gives the same meaning of species, kind. For example, cats are a species. Lions, a different species. Tigers, different species. Pine trees, different species. Okay, now species. Are you following me? species that live in the same area at the same time are called population. Please notice this.
Yes.
For example, if we have a group of lions that live in the same place, in the savannah, for example, at the same time, these individuals or these organisms are called population. But suppose that we have a lion for example, in one country or in one area, and another lion in another country or another ecosystem. They do not belong to the same population. They are the same species, but they
waiting room محمد
ترى الأستاذ اللي هو
معلش I'm sorry. There's a problem with the net connection. الآن can you hear me good? سامعيني كويس؟ طيب. Okay, so the population, the second level of organization. طيب, individuals. We have the smallest thing in ecosystem of the organism. A group of organisms of the same species that live in a particular area at the same time is called population. A group of populations make up a community. Communities, a particular area usually contain more than one species of organism. For a community, all different populations, all the different populations that live together in one area, in an area, make up a community. Example, if you go to an ecosystem, the population of
مش موجود الكتاب تيتشر
صورة الكتاب مش طالع عندكم؟
الصفحة مش
شباب
أستاذ الصفحة مش موجودة الكتاب
تيتشر
الصفحة راحت؟
راحت
هسه طلعت؟ تمام طيب. A community means many populations or different populations that live in the same area or in the same ecosystem. طيب. Listen to me, please. For example, in one ecosystem, many, for example, a population of tigers, a population of lions, a population of deers, all of them make up a community like this. Here, as you see here, please. شباب الصورة طالعة بعد عندكم؟
بس
Look here, we have different populations.
Yes, teacher.
This is the deers, one population. Zebras, another population, or giraffes. All of them together make up a community. طيب. Again. طيب. Now, شو المشكلة؟ Now, the community of organisms that lives in a particular area along with the non-living environment make up an ecosystem. So, ecosystem means the community of organisms together with their non-living environment. Or in another way, you can say that the community organisms or biotic components and then the abiotic components make up the ecosystem. The study of how organisms شباب سامعيني؟
Yes.
The study, the branch of science, the field of science that study how organisms interact with each other and with their environment is called أحمد ليش بضلك تطلع؟ طيب استنى شوي استنى. وين احمد العزام؟ وين احمد؟ احمد انت اللي ضلك بقول انا مين اللي بيحرك الشاشه؟ هو اللي بتحرك فيها من بعد، ليش تعمل هيك؟ The community of organisms that lives in a particular area together with the non-living environment makes up an ecosystem. The study of how organisms interact with each other and with their environment is called ecology. Okay? طيب. سامعيني شباب؟
يس.
طيب. هسه فهمت انا شو اللي بقول مين اللي بيحرك بالشاشه؟ طلع احمد. طيب populations. There are several things that can change a population size. These things are birth and death, then immigration and immigration, one with I and the other with E, and they are different. And the last one is population density. طيب. What is, of course, simply birth and death. If the number of births is larger than the number of deaths, what will happen to the population size? Will increase. We call it growth rate. Look here, sorry, birth rate and death rate. A population grows when more individuals are born into it than die. A population grows when more individuals are born into it than die in any period of time. So when the birth rate is greater than the death rate, so the population will increase, or the size of the population size will increase. We mean by the population birth rate, the number of births per 1,000 individuals for a given time period. We mean by a given time period maybe 1 year or more. يعني the number of births per 1,000 individuals for a given period of time. For example, in 1 year or in 2 years or in 5 years or in 10 years, whatever. When the birth rate is, and the death rate means the number of deaths per 1,000 individuals for a given time period. When birth rate is the same as the death rate, when they are very close, then the population will remain stable. It will no increase and no decrease. And if the death rate is greater than the birth rate, so the population will decrease. The population size will get smaller. Clear? طيب. Immigration with I always remember in. To understand it, or يعني حتى ما نخربط, immigration means when moving into a population. When individuals join a population, this will increase the number of the population size. Immigration with E, remember the word exit, leaving a population. طيب. So if more individuals enter into the population, it will increase. This is immigration. If individuals leave the population, it's called immigration. The population size will decrease. Finally, population density can be calculated by the number of individuals per unit area. Density means the population density is the number of individuals in an area of a specific size. If the population density increases, of course, we have individuals will find little space. Suppose an ecologist estimates there are 800 beetles living in a park measuring 400 square meters. So you have to divide the number of individuals, which is 800, by the unit area, which is 400 square meters. And the answer will be 2 beetles per square meter. For each beetle, there is a space of two two beetles, where they will have 1 square meter. If suppose that the number of beetles increases and the area stay the same, of course, the density will decrease. I mean, the number of beetles that live in the square meter will increase. يعني, suppose that this number is 1,200. 1,200 divided by 400 will equals 3 beetles per square meter. That means more individuals will live in the same space. ايش يا سلمى؟ Do you have any
لا
question?
بنسى بالخطأ. لا
don't worry مش مشكلة يا سلمى. Don't worry.
والله ما في إشي بس
عادي
لأنه
ما في
بالخطأ
مشكلة.
إجت.
طيب, what are the factors that limit the population growth? Why the population growth? Why the populations can't grow for infinity? Always there are factors that limit or stop the population growth. These factors are called limiting factors. Okay. An environmental factor, and these factors must be environmental. يعني we mean by environmental factors either biological, biotic, or abiotic. These factors cause a population to what? To stop growing or decrease in size. Again, these factors are environmental, from the environment itself, either biological, living things, or abiotic factors, physical, like the space, shelter, the air, the water. All of these are called limiting factors because they cause a population to stop growing or decrease in size. For example, disease. If there is a disease in a population, it will kill many organisms. Type, what are the limiting factors? Food and water. If there is no little food, or if there is little water, of course, then this will affect the population size. Climate and weather is like, for example, natural disasters such as hurricanes, floods. All of these can also limit the population growth. Space and shelter, of course, look at this picture. If there is no space for organisms, if the area is crowded, organisms will leave the population to find a space. So space and shelter is very important because organisms always seek for nest, seek for shelter, seek for homes. Fine. This is everything about lesson 1. Let's go to lesson 2. شباب فاهمين؟ طيب.
Yes.
Grade 7 topic 4 lesson 2. طيب.
أوكي.
طيب, I am opening the lesson. It's opening now. It's loading. طيب, فتحت عندكم؟
لا لسه.
No.
لسه ما فتحت.
طيب, يلا مش مشكلة. هاي. الآن.
No. Yes.
Yes, energy flow in ecosystems. You have to know that. In any organism in the ecosystem has an energy, a role in energy. And we can divide organisms according to how they get energy into producers, consumers, and decomposers. Okay? What are producers? Producers are an organism that can make its own food, is called a producer. This includes all plants, trees, shrubs, grasses. All of these are producers. Also algae. Algae are producers because they can make their food by a process called photosynthesis. Producers make their own food not in the kitchen, in their leaves, in a process called photosynthesis. So a producer is any organism that can make its own food, like plants. All plants are producers. Also algae and some types of bacteria. All of these are producers. Consumers, the second type of organisms, consumer, it obtains energy by feeding on other organisms. Consumers can't make their own food. They obtain energy by feeding on other organisms. We can also divide, or consumers can be divided into three types or three categories. Herbivores. Herbivores are consumers that eat only plants, like what? Sheep, goats, deer, zebras. Okay. Carnivores are consumers that can eat only other animals. Carnivores, consumers that eat only animals, or you can say that they eat only meat. They don't eat plants. They eat only animals, are carnivores, like what? Sharks, owls, tigers, lions, whatever. There is a special type of carnivores called the scavenger. The scavenger feeds on the remains of the meals or on the bodies of dead organisms. Yani in general, scavengers can't hunt, but they just eat. Notice, very important point, scavengers eat only animals, but they eat dead organisms. Like, for example, hagfish. I think pigs. I think pigs, but no, pigs can eat plants. So scavengers are carnivores, but they can't hunt. They just eat the remains of dead organisms. Vulture, for example. Right. So the consumers in general obtain energy by feeding on other organisms. We can separate them or divide them into three types: the herbivores, carnivores, and a special type of carnivore scavenger. Also, we have the omnivores. Omnivores that eat both plants and animals. Humans are all omnivores because we eat both plants and animals. Fine. Now the third type, organisms, we said again that can be divided into producers, consumers, and the third type, decomposers. Decomposers break down biotic wastes and dead organisms, returning their raw materials to the ecosystem. Decomposers include bacteria, mushrooms, fungi. So, decomposers break down biotic wastes and dead organisms, returning the raw materials to the ecosystem. Decomposers generally are microorganisms, okay? Like bacteria, like fungi. Understood?
Yes.
So mushrooms, bacteria, and mold. Mold is a type of fungi, are common decomposers. مش تخربطوا بين الديكمبوزرز والسكافنجرز. Scavengers are part of what? Of carnivores. Scavengers are carnivores, are consumers, but decomposers are completely different. Decomposers are mainly tiny organisms. They feed on the remains of plants and animals. They change these materials or break down these materials into other nutrients and return them to the soil. فاهمين؟ طيب.
Yes.
Yes.
How energy and matter transfer between organisms? We can, energy and matter transfer can be represented, or we can explain this in three ways: food chains, food webs, and energy pyramids. Food chain shows how is a series of events in which one organism eats another organism, eats another and obtain energy and nutrients. And we can show the food chain like this by using arrows. In this food chain, for example, here, look at this food chain. The phytoplankton is a producer, and always remember at the beginning of any food chain or any food web, we must start with a producer. Then this organism or the phytoplankton is eaten by the zooplankton, so some of its energy transferred, in this case energy is transferred to zooplankton. Zooplankton is eaten by this organism, by crustaceans. Then the salmon eat this organism, And in this way, energy flows between, and this salmon is eaten by the bear. So this is a food chain. Food webs are more complex and consist of many overlapping food chains and ecosystem. By the way, relationships between organisms are more complicated in nature, and you can't find a single food chain. Always food chains are overlapping and interacting with each other, and this overlapping food chains are called food webs. This is, for example, example of a food web. This plant can be eaten by many organisms. The same thing, grasshopper can be eaten by many organisms. The same thing, look how they are overlapping and interacting. So food webs are, you can say that food webs are made up of many food chains. We have ما بعرف أي ساعة تخلص الحصة؟